he comes at us, he's going to get a rude awakening. We're unlike any other country, but if they want to try to annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cut off their energy.
The trade war between Canada and the US just hit a boiling point, and the stakes couldn't be higher. In a bold move, Canada has banned electricity exports to the US in retaliation for Trump's aggressive tariffs. Is this a calculated power play by Canada, or a dangerous gamble that could backfire on both sides?
They rely on our energy, they need to feel the pain. They want to come at us hard, we're going to come back twice as hard.
The trade war between the US and Canada has taken a sharp and unexpected turn. What began as tariff disputes over vehicles, metals, and agricultural products has now escalated into an energy standoff.
I'm fighting like hell, and we're going to protect Canada. He's underestimating the Canadian people, the resilience of the Canadian people, and the strength of the Canadian people.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford has delivered a stunning blow by announcing that Canada will halt electricity exports to the United States. This move could plunge parts of America into an energy crisis.
That Ontario Premier Doug Ford threatened to shut off his province's electricity exports to the United States and block shipments of Ontario's high-grade nickel, which he said provides.
Now the big question looms. Who is really taking the bigger gamble here? Is it Canada, risking its massive energy export revenue, or the United States, betting that it can weather this storm? This standoff has implications far beyond electricity. It's about control, survival, and global influence.
We have a very fair trading balance. And if we exclude the energy, the oil that we ship down 4.3 million barrels a day.
Let's talk numbers, because they tell the real story of how interconnected these two countries are. Canada supplies crude oil imports to the United States, but it doesn't stop at oil. Canadian natural gas, hydroelectricity, and other energy resources are critical lifelines for millions of Americans. States like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota are especially vulnerable, relying heavily on energy imports from Ontario to keep homes heated, businesses running, and cities powered.
Ontario powers 1.5 million homes and businesses in New York, in Michigan, in Minnesota. I've talked to all three governors. I want to ship more electricity. I want to send more critical minerals, but I will not hesitate to use every tool in our toolbox to protect Ontarians and Canadians.
Approximately 1.5 million Americans depend on Ontario's electricity exports. The Midwest, in particular, relies on Canadian hydroelectric power during peak demand seasons when domestic energy production can't keep up. Analysts estimate that losing Canadian energy could cost the US billions annually, not only in higher energy prices, but also in cascading disruptions across supply chains.
But if they want to try to annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face.
According to BBC News, Doug Ford's message to Washington was clear. Don't take Canada's energy for granted. I'll cut the power with a smile on my face. And he's already put his money where his mouth is. The 25% surcharge on electricity exports is a financial burden that American states reliant on Canadian power will feel immediately.
We're going to cancel Starlinks right away from Elon Musk. Not that $100 million makes a difference for him, but it's principle.
Then there's the cancellation of the $100 million Starlink deal. Elon Musk's satellite internet project was counting on Canadian partnerships, but Ford pulled the plug as part of Ontario's broader retaliation strategy. This isn't just about punishing Musk or his company. It's a calculated move aimed at showing that Canada is willing to disrupt high-profile projects if pushed too far. Ford isn't acting in isolation. His alignment with Canadian federal leaders signals that this is a unified stance, not just a provincial rebellion. By cutting off electricity and imposing these measures, Ford has effectively turned the energy relationship between Canada and the US into a political weapon. And it's a powerful one.
We're powerful on energy. We're powerful on nuclear energy, on oil, on goods going back and forth across the border.
The stakes are enormous, not just for these two nations, but for the global energy market. If Canada sticks to its guns, the US will have to scramble to fill the energy gap. potentially turning to domestic sources or alternative suppliers, but those options aren't cheap or immediately available. Meanwhile, Canada risks losing a lucrative revenue stream by cutting off energy exports to its largest trading partner. It's a high-stakes poker game, and both sides are playing to win.
The stock market is worried. Shares have gone down, and this has been a terrible year for U.S. stocks already because of these tariff threats. And the reality is, you guys need us. We are your largest market by far.
So who's gambling smarter? On one hand, Canada is diversifying its trade relationships, looking to Europe and Asia to reduce its dependence on the U.S. On the other hand, Trump's tariffs are testing whether the U.S. can truly afford to alienate its closest energy partner. The outcome of this standoff could redefine North America's energy landscape and possibly its political alliances for years to come.
And President Trump ran on a mandate to lower costs, to create more jobs. This is going to do exactly the opposite.
Trump's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian imports was bold, calculated, and undeniably controversial. The tariffs, targeting sectors like vehicles, metals, and energy, were positioned as a rallying cry for America First, appealing to U.S. voters who saw domestic manufacturing and energy independence as critical to national strength. For Trump, this was a move designed to deliver quick political wins. But beneath the surface, the strategy comes with far-reaching consequences that could backfire spectacularly.
And we're going to continue seeing, in the U.S., plants close, assembly lines shut down. In the auto sector, they may last 5, maybe 8 days before the parts that go back and forth across the border 8 times. This is unnecessary.
The tariffs came into effect in 2025 and were explicitly aimed at sectors where Canada is a dominant supplier to the U.S. For example, the auto industry is a central target, with U.S. automakers relying heavily on Canadian metals and parts for production.
The auto sector, we buy over 400% more autos than Mexico, 200% more than anywhere in the world. And you know, he put up a smoke screen, he keeps moving the goalposts. Well, the market is speaking loud and clear. The market is going to go down.
In return, Canada is the bigger buyer of automobiles from the U.S. Energy too, is deeply entangled in this cross-border relationship. By hitting Canadian imports, Trump signaled his willingness to disrupt the U.S.-Canada energy partnership, a critical lifeline that has ensured affordable energy access for decades.
President Trump's tariffs on Canada will hurt us. They will also hurt Americans. U.S. markets are on the decline. In fact, the S&P 500 has already wiped out over $3 trillion in value.
Tariffs on Canadian metals and vehicles have already led to higher production costs for U.S. manufacturers. These costs inevitably trickle down to American consumers, who are now facing increased prices for cars, appliances, and other goods. Additionally, global competitors, particularly from Europe and Asia, are stepping in to fill gaps left by the strained U.S.-Canada trade relationship. Perhaps most critically, the tariffs risk alienating Canada at a time when the U.S. needs strong allies. With geopolitical tensions flaring in Eastern Europe and Asia, alienating a trusted partner like Canada weakens the U.S.'s position on the global stage. Trump's gamble might yield short-term gains for certain industries, but the long-term costs could be devastating.
But we're your number one customer to 28 states. Have directed our office to take off all the alcohol. We're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world.
The ripple effects could extend to industries reliant on energy-intensive processes. The auto sector, already grappling with higher costs due to tariffs on Canadian metals, could see further disruptions if energy prices spike. Agriculture, another cornerstone of the U.S. economy, could also suffer. Canada, for its part, isn't sitting idly by. Faced with Trump's tariffs, the country has pursued a bold strategy to diversify its trade relationships and reduce its reliance on the U.S. At the center of this strategy is a 0% tariff trade agreement with the European Union. This deal, which went into effect in late 2024, has already begun to reshape Canada's trade landscape. By diversifying its energy export markets, Canada is taking a calculated risk. The US has historically been its most reliable customer, and severing this relationship could have significant economic repercussions. However, Canadian leaders seem confident that the long-term benefits of trade diversification outweigh the immediate risks.
An example of a measure that I will put in place as Prime Minister is 100% tariffs on Teslas. I think that should get some attention in the White House.
Let's talk about Elon Musk and Tesla. They're caught in a serious mess right now. When Canada announced plans to tax Tesla and other US-made electric cars, it was a big problem for Tesla because they rely heavily on Canadian raw materials like nickel and lithium. Without these, Tesla's production line could slow down big time. Imagine how that would mess up their plans to dominate the electric vehicle market. This has turned into a high-stakes game between Trump and Ontario Premier Doug Ford. If Ford actually goes through with his threat, millions of Americans could be in for a rough time, and Trump's America First plan might not look so strong anymore. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is watching this fight closely. Europe, China, and Japan are stepping up as potential new energy partners for Canada. Europe, in particular, is already building stronger trade ties with Canada, and Asia is eager to secure more Canadian LNG for their markets. This isn't just a Canada versus US problem anymore. It's shaking up global energy dynamics. What twists and turns will unfold next in this Canada-US trade showdown? Hit that like button and subscribe now to stay ahead of every breaking detail.